There's a lot of different planets in the world, and each one of them have a different story. But there's one planet in particular that's in our own solar system. Jupiter. This planet was the first planet that formed in the beginning of the solar system, and it has an age of 5 billion years. Which you should also know that Earth is 4.5 billion years old. So Jupiter was 500 million years old when Earth was just beginning to form. The name Jupiter comes from Roman mythology, and he was a king of gods, and they gave this name to the planet because it's the biggest planet. If you guys don't already know, the planets go in this order from the Sun: Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, and after Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune are after. So Jupiter is after Mars, so it should be really close to us. But the distance is 588 million kilometers. And that's at its nearest distance, but when it's at its farthest, it's 968 million kilometers away. Let's take a closer look to this monstrosity of a planet. If you look at the diameter of Jupiter, you could fit 11 Earths in there. But if you want to count the volume, you could fit 1,300 Earths inside Jupiter. And the mass is 318 times of Earth's mass. 318 is a crazy number, and if you put the mass of every single planet in the solar system together minus Jupiter, it's 129 times Earth's mass. So in this case, we are slowly realizing how huge this planet is. The first 4 planets of the solar system, and that includes our planet, they're all made of rock and have a surface, meaning you could pretty much stand on it. I already know that Mercury is a really hot planet and you really can't stand there, but it is a solid surface. But Jupiter has no surface, and it's formed with a bunch of gases: 75% hydrogen, 24% helium, and 1% other. And all these gases are held together by a small core. The other gases are ammonia, methane, and oxygen. When we look at Jupiter, we're basically looking at the atmosphere. We pretty much can't see anything inside the planet, and that's because the atmosphere is 70 kilometers thick. And if you look at this atmosphere, it's pretty much like an ocean of gas, and it's always moving. And they produce different types of colors like white, yellow, orange, and red. And the reason for the colors are the different gases. But the most famous part of Jupiter is this little spot, and it's known as the Great Red Spot. But it's not really a spot. This is a hurricane, which started 300 years ago, and it's still going. When a storm forms on Earth, it lasts about 2 weeks. But on Jupiter, this storm started 300 years ago, and it's not looking to stop either. The speed of this hurricane is 640 kilometers an hour, meaning it's 2.5 times the fastest storm on Earth. Jupiter's gravity is so strong that in time, it collected 79 moons around it. Meaning anything big that passed by, Jupiter took it in its orbit. Between these 79 moons of Jupiter, 4 of them stand out. The biggest one is Ganymede, and this moon is also the biggest moon in the entire solar system. It's also 26% bigger than Mercury. The next moon is Callisto. Callisto is pretty much the same size as Mercury, but you could say it's 1% smaller. The next moon is Io. You see these spots on the moon? These spots are all volcanoes, and Io is the most volcanically active place in the solar system. There's 400 volcanoes on this sphere and it's always active, and it's not looking to stop either. The last big moon is Europa. Europa is a moon covered in ice, but astronomers believe that under this ice there's water, and in those waters you could find life. Europa deserves its own video because there's a lot of cool information about it. But let's move on. Let's go back to Jupiter. You could say Jupiter is like a shield. It has such a strong gravitational pull that it pulls a lot of the asteroids that comes in the solar system. And there's always a lot of meteors hitting Jupiter. And these meteors that enter Jupiter, they also have mass themselves, and they keep adding mass to this giant planet. And that's another reason that this planet is this big. And it's also the oldest, and that's pretty much why it's so big. Before Earth was formed, Jupiter had already begun turning into a giant, and it also became a giant shield for the solar system. Planets like Jupiter in the whole universe are really not common, and planets at this size with this mass are extremely rare, but it could be found. HATP 67b is another gas planet, and scientists believe that this is the largest planet we've ever found. This planet is 2 times Jupiter in size. But it's not as massive as Jupiter because the mass of this planet is half of Jupiter's. Even though it's twice in size, it's not as massive. HATP 67b was found in 2017 and it's 1,043 light years away. But again, let's go back to our own giant. Jupiter's orbit around the Sun takes about 12 years, meaning a year on Jupiter is 12 years on Earth. But you should also know that 1 day on Jupiter is 9 hours and 56 minutes. In this short time, Jupiter makes a full turn, and for a planet this size, this is insane. The speed that Jupiter is spinning is 43,000 kilometers an hour. This mass and the speed of spinning is making scientists want to use this energy, and you could say they've used this energy before. If you haven't heard about Voyager 1, you should know that Voyager 1's speed is achieved because of Jupiter, and it used Jupiter like a slingshot and caught all the speed. But that was 40 years ago. Let's see what scientists come up with now.